At the turn of the 21st century, online technology represented tools to liberate Americans from reliance on distrusted legacy media outlets. As social media proliferated over the past decade, citizens could directly connect with large numbers of people and could cut out corporate media outlets entirely. Over the years, however, these platforms have changed from neutral platforms that provided Americans with the freedom to speak to enforcers of preferred narratives. Consequently, these platforms have played an increasingly decisive role in elections and have negatively impacted Americans who dissent from orthodoxies favored by the big tech cartel.
Is it crazy to start thinking about the 2024 election? I mean, I know it's not healthy, but is it crazy? Because, ladies and gentlemen, I think I found this a great candidate. Let me introduce you to my governor, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. In a press conference this week, he laid out a series of new legislations targeting big tech. He also exposed big tech and mainstream media bias. The conference was long, but as always, your boy cut out the most important clips, and I'm going to show it to you. We will also be covering Biden's new overflow facility for migrant children, aka more kids in cages. Fantastic! Now I must warn you, I couldn't find any clips with perfect audio. All the audio is 1 second behind. And I know, it sucks, but if it bothers you that much, just close your eyes. It's worth hearing, I promise. DeSantis started out pretty good. He started naming some of the natural rights he believes in. Privacy, individual, and property rights. Frankly, something you should want to hear from every politician. Take a listen.
I'm committed to addressing what may be one of the most pervasive threats to American self-government in the 21st century, because I believe in individual rights, privacy rights, and property rights.
Good start, and it gets better. DeSantis then claims that he will be taking on censorship and deplatforming, two very important issues for the present, and even more so for the future. Which makes me think, is he doing this so he can run for president in 2024 and not be derailed by big tech? Take a listen.
We also are going to address censorship and deplatforming. Now, these network of Silicon Valley CEOs wield extraordinary power to the point of holistically controlling the flow of vast swaths of information in our country. In a matter of hours, a business can be dismantled, a community of friends and colleagues canceled, and even a sitting president of the United States silenced. Make no mistake, they are nothing more than advertising conglomerates, and I'm not interested in handing over the keys to the public square to a bunch of companies whose economic interests are not aligned with the public interest.
When Jack Dorsey created Twitter, he said it was with the intent of creating a new public square. This is true. According to the law, however, whenever a business opens itself up to the public to a certain extent, then constitutional protections begin to apply. And I think this may be the case with Twitter. DeSantis moves on to talking about how bad censorship can be, and as an example, he uses lockdowns. Take a listen.
Consequences of big tech censorship are felt far and wide. Take, for example, big tech's approach to censoring criticism of pseudo-scientific lockdowns during the coronavirus pandemic. Well, these lockdowns were almost universally rejected in pre-COVID pandemic preparedness plans. Lockdowns at the time of the pandemic were favored by the, quote, narrative. And so in the name of, quote, science, articles and posts warning against lockdowns were taken down and censored. The result has been the destruction of millions of lives across America, as well as increased deaths from suicide, substance abuse, and despair, without any corresponding benefit in COVID mortality.
The lockdowns were so bad that, for example, in Las Vegas, a school was forced to reopen because there was a surge in students, I can't say this word on YouTube, there was a surge in students going to sleep forever by their own hand. Awful, sickening, and it could have been avoided, but science. Let's keep going.
And the worst part, they change the rules constantly based on whatever they deem to be politically correct at any given point in time. These rules and standards are often changed without the knowledge of their users, moving the goalposts on Floridians and others who use these open forums for discourse and as a source for information. When a social media company applies these standards unequally on users, this is discrimination, pure and simple. Can you imagine tolerating this kind of behavior in banking or in healthcare or in other industries? So today we announced during this legislative session that we will seek to do the following: ensure that Floridians are safeguarded against these practices from technology companies by requiring proper notice and disclosure of these changes.
I don't think DeSantis takes it as far as I like here. I think at this point, political affiliation should be a protected class just like race or religion. He did, however, propose something I do agree with. He said big tech should allow us to opt out of certain content instead of being censored. Let us decide. Let the user decide. And don't ban people either. If I don't want to see a certain person's content, I could unfollow, I could unsubscribe, I could mute them. It's very simple. Let the people decide. Check it out.
We'll also require that users be provided the option to opt out of the various algorithms these platforms use to steer content, or in many cases, suppress content from the view of other users. But these provisions are of no use without enforcement, and we will provide recourse for Floridians both by enabling a user to bring a cause of action against a technology company for violating these requirements of Florida law and empowering the Attorney General to bring action against the technology company for violations of these requirements under Florida's Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices Act.
Thank you! Now if I can prove that I'm being suppressed by the algorithm, I can sue YouTube. Fantastic! DeSantis went on to explain that companies that ban political candidates will receive hefty daily fines and that big tech news manipulation will no longer be accepted.
If I were to give something of value to a candidate or political committee, it would be a contribution. But big tech has been manipulating news content and designing algorithms to give the upper hand to their candidates of choice, and they do so scot-free. Again, euphemistically called content moderation. I think it's more political manipulation. That's why in Florida, we're going to take action. We're going to take aim at those companies and pull back the veil and make sure these guys don't continue to find loopholes and gray areas to live above the law.
Once he went off script and started answering questions, it got even better. I like him more off the cuff than reading. He brought wonderful examples, this time the Hunter Biden story, and then he explained the importance of protecting everyday citizens from our big tech overlords. Don't ban me. Take a listen.
Well, I think it's been done in a way that's completely unprincipled. They mentioned the Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden's story was true, okay? We now know it was true. And the typical corporate media outlets, they just chose to ignore it. Obviously, they wanted to beat Trump. They had a view on the election. They didn't want to give it any air. So we rely on social media to go around that, not let corporate legacy media outlets control the discourse and let us speak. So you had the New York Post to run it, and you couldn't get any traction. You couldn't get any reach on it because big tech put their thumb on the scale. So that was true. What they said at the time, oh, it's a conspiracy or it's based on hacked information. Are you kidding me? You're trying to tell me if there was hacked information that could damage me, you guys wouldn't print it? Give me a break. You can whiz on my leg, but don't tell me it's raining. You guys would print it every single day if you could, and big tech would allow it to proliferate every single day, 24/7. So it's not being done on a principled basis, and it's not. There's threats on me, and it only gets taken down if law enforcement goes and tells them to do it. Otherwise, it just stays up. They're not moderating any of that.
Since DeSantis was being very logical and making a lot of sense, journalists tried discrediting him by asking him, oh, do you believe Trump? Do you believe the Trump election story? DeSantis' answer? Perfect. Check it out.
And I've not yet heard you say one way or the other, A, did the president bear any responsibility for what happened at the Capitol? And B, do you agree with the president that the election was stolen from him and that there was widespread fraud?
So here's what I would say. How many people tweeted in 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 20 that Russia stole the election for Trump? That happened every day, thousands of times a day. Nancy Pelosi said the election was taken from us by Russia. Did any of those people get deplatformed? I don't remember even anyone calling for them to deplatform. Now, obviously, the collusion was a conspiracy theory. It was not based in fact. They did an exhaustive investigation, found squat. And yet that was common practice to be able to say that. And so to not deplatform some, but then to deplatform others when they're making claims, I just don't see how that would be there. But those claims of collusion were amplified by big tech.
Perfectly answered. He ended by explaining the dangers of hate speech legislation or regulation, because nobody could do it without being biased. It's impossible. It can't be done.
If you're going to have one standard, then that'd be one thing. But I think that's the problem. This is why the Founding Fathers felt the need to do the First Amendment. Because, you can sit there and look at speech, and there's some speech that definitely provides no value. Some speech that could even be harmful for society. But who gets to make those determinations? Who gets to draw that line? And when you're somebody that's perched in Silicon Valley, and you're woke, and you believe George Washington and Abraham Lincoln should be removed from the schools, and you have all these different views, you're not someone that's going to be a referee, just as I may not be someone that would referee speech that you think would be important. That is the problem with all this. It can't be done in a principled way, and it's going to be done that exhibits the bias of the people in Silicon Valley.
The man spoke for about 30 minutes, but I think I showed you the most important parts. Now, do you want to see some more media manipulation? I know you do. Check this out. I'm sure all of you remember AOC and CNN and the lefty screaming, Trump has kids in cages. The fascist, he's got kids in cages. Never mind the fact that Obama built the cages, but now they're reporting things differently. President Biden is now building more cages, but CNN calls it an overflow facility for unaccompanied migrant children. Sounds like cages to me, but I doubt that AOC is going to dress in white and go, have a photo shoot like she did when Trump was president, because there's no point now. The orange man is out. And that's it for today. Ron DeSantis 2024? Or am I crazy to even be thinking about that right now? Comment down below. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe. It's free. See you next time.